Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into something that is just so primal, a deeply human fascination, our absolute relentless desire to push the very limits of our own fear. I mean, think about it. Ever since our ancestors sat around the very first campfires, staring out into the pitch-black woods, we've been telling stories just to terrify ourselves. But here's the thing. As we've evolved, the stuff that scares us has evolved right along with us. We've totally shifted from fearing the literal predator in the woods to the darkness lurking inside our own minds, and ultimately to the vast, terrifying emptiness of the universe itself.
Okay, so let's just dive right into this. You've got to wonder, why do we deliberately scare ourselves? We live in a relatively safe modern world, right? We don't have to constantly outrun bears or tigers anymore. So why on earth do we still seek out that feeling of being absolutely terrified? Why are we buying tickets to horror movies or reading books that we know for a fact are going to keep us up all night? It honestly seems totally counterintuitive to our basic survival instincts, doesn't it?
Well, the answer actually might just come down to our biology. The essayist Elizabeth Barrett makes a brilliant point about this. She says our ancestors literally lived and died by that old fight or flight reaction. Back then, it was absolutely crucial for survival. But as civilization grew and we sort of pushed the dangerous wilderness away, our daily lives got a lot calmer. And Barrett argues that, because of that, we actually felt something missing, that sheer excitement of living on the edge. So without a physical beast chasing us, we essentially use horror stories to hit the gym for our evolutionary mental muscles. We use fiction to safely confront the unknown, getting that massive adrenaline rush while we're just sitting completely safe on our couches.
All right, Section 1, From Mind to Cosmos, Mapping Our Fears.
Now, what's really interesting here is how we can literally map out this expansion of fear. Take psychological horror, for example. You look at Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart, and that represents the most intimate threat possible, our own minds. The horror is entirely internal, driven by paranoia, guilt, and a wildly unreliable narrator. We're terrified of our own sanity breaking down. But then, we expand outward into folk or social horror. A perfect example of this is Shirley Jackson's The Lottery. Here, the threat isn't just one guy losing his mind. It's the terrifying, unquestioning cruelty of an entire community. It's the absolute horror of blind conformity and destructive tradition. So we've moved from being afraid of ourselves to being afraid of our neighbors.
But, okay, here's where we hit a massive boundary. Traditional horror still operates on a human scale. Evil is a real thing, whether it's a serial killer or a messed up society, and because it's on a human scale, you can fight it, you can understand it, or you can at least try to run away. Basically, victories are possible. But now pivot over to cosmic dread. In this realm, the rules go completely out the window. There is no evil because the universe is just completely indifferent to us. Humanity is entirely insignificant. And honestly, the most chilling part is that if you try to fight the horror here, any victory is strictly temporary. There's just no defeating an uncaring universe.
Section 2, The Core of Cosmic Dread and the Insignificance of Humanity.
So what are we really talking about here? Let's define this clearly. Cosmic horror is not about a guy in a mask chasing you through the woods. It pits our utter human insignificance against the vast, completely unknowable, and totally indifferent elements of the universe. It is that sickening pit-of-your-stomach realization that the universe is ancient, it's unfathomably huge, it does not care about you even a little bit, and humanity is just a microscopic, momentary blip within it. The monster isn't coming to punish you for your sins, the monster might literally just step on you because it didn't even notice you were there.
And you really can't talk about this without mentioning the absolute blueprint for this terrifying philosophy, H.P. Lovecraft's seminal 1928 work, The Call of Cthulhu. Now, this isn't just a scary story. It is a literal masterclass in building an atmosphere of dread that relies entirely on human insignificance. Let's look at how he actually pulls this off.
You know what makes Lovecraft's approach so incredibly effective? He doesn't just drop a monster in your lap on page 1. It's all about the slow burn. The dread is built up through hearsay and these layers of scattered global evidence. The main character, Francis Wayland Thurston, starts uncovering this fragmented mystery. Suddenly, artists all over the world are getting plagued by the exact same bizarre fever dreams. You've got cultists deep in the Louisiana swamps and isolated tribes in remote jungles performing identical, terrifying rituals without ever saying a word to each other. The real horror hits you when you realize that something ancient and massive is waking up, and it's subtly messing with human consciousness on a global scale. It's like a giant, terrifying puzzle.
Section 3, The Architecture of Madness, When Reality Breaks.
So imagine you're a Norwegian sailor in this story, and you accidentally stumble upon the sunken city of Relay out in the middle of the South Pacific. They don't just find some creepy, old, normal ruins.
No, they discover a city built with non-Euclidean geometry that completely defies natural physical laws. The architecture itself is just all wrong. Acute angles behave like they're obtuse. Flat surfaces seem to curve in ways that shouldn't be physically possible. It's like the fundamental rules of reality, of physics and space, are just completely broken. And just looking at these buildings induces profound psychological horror, because it proves the universe operates on alien principles that our brains literally cannot process.
And sitting right in the middle of all that impossible geometry is the entity Cthulhu, being worshipped by this sprawling, ancient cult. Which brings us to their iconic chant, Pringulu Muglanov Cthulhu Rilia Waganov Thajan. Try saying that 3 times fast. It translates to, in his house at Rilia, dead Cthulhu waits dreaming. But check out the twist here. These cultists, they aren't looking for some kind of moral salvation like you see in traditional religions. Nope, they are looking for terrifying liberation. They want to completely throw away human morality and their humanity altogether in exchange for just pure, chaotic cosmic power when Cthulhu finally wakes up.
And this brilliantly illustrates the core tragedy of Lovecraft's entire universe. Every single character who pokes their nose into this mystery follows the exact same 3-step arc. First, basic human curiosity leads to discovery. Standard stuff. But second, that discovery forces a horrifying understanding of how reality actually works. And finally, because the human mind just isn't built to hold that kind of understanding, it inevitably, 100% of the time, leads to total psychological ruin, madness, or death. Seeking the truth is literally a death sentence for your sanity.
Moving on to Section 4, the ultimate fear, facing the indifferent cosmos.
Now you might be wondering, why does a century-old story about a tentacle monster still get under our skin so much today? Well, the truth is, cosmic dread terrifies us now more than ever because modern science actually kind of backs it up. As astronomy reveals an ever vaster, possibly infinite universe, our place in it just gets smaller and smaller. We literally know for a fact that supermassive black holes are out there right now, and they could swallow our entire solar system without leaving a single trace. Biology tells us we're just this tiny, super recent branch on a massive evolutionary tree. Lovecraft's vision of an uncaring cosmos feels prophetically true, right? The ultimate horror isn't that monsters exist, it's the quiet, horrifying truth that the universe never belonged to us in the first place.
And that leads us perfectly to the opening line of The Call of Cthulhu, which is honestly one of the most famous quotes in all of horror literature. The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. Basically, the point here is that our continued sanity depends entirely on our own ignorance. We only make it through our day-to-day lives because our brains actively filter out the terrifying reality of our absolute insignificance in the grand scheme of the cosmos. Ignorance isn't just bliss, it's literally what keeps us sane.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a bit of a challenge to our collective human ego. How comfortable are you with your own cosmic insignificance? The next time you look up at the stars on a clear, dark night, try to remind yourself that you're not looking at some beautiful canopy that was built just for you. You are staring into an infinite, completely indifferent abyss. And maybe, just maybe, somewhere in that dark sea of infinity, something is staring back. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey into the unknown today. Keep questioning, keep learning, and maybe keep the lights on tonight.